Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, helping transform crowded, dated, or inefficient kitchens into more functional spaces for daily life. Details at callmosby.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Kate Grumke. This hour, we're continuing our series, Torn, the struggle to recover from the tornado, the flailing government response, and the fight for North St. Louis. Later in the hour, we'll talk with STLPR reporters Andrea Henderson and Hiba Ahmed about how last May's tornado highlighted long-standing disinvestment in North St. Louis. And we'll highlight people who have moved out of the city because of the tornado, but also people who have chosen to stay and rebuild. One of those families that decided to stay and rebuild are the Nolans. Gloria and Kevin Nolan and their children have been displaced since May 16th, after the tornado ripped their new roof off their home and left a massive hole in their family duplex. The damage of their home and uncertainty of what the future holds has been a concern for the family, including 14-year-old Dylan and 11-year-old Evan Nolan.
I was scared that somebody got hurt. I was worried about my dog because she was still inside the house. But she was fine. She came out barking crazy like normal.
I was also worried about my dog, but also I was worried about our items inside the house, since most of the stuff inside the house hold memories.
And that's where we're starting today's show. Host Elaine Cha talked with Gloria and Kevin last week to give us an update on their tornado recovery experience. Here's Elaine.
So overall, let's just get a check of how we're doing. Has there been a weight, lifted off your shoulders, or do you still feel like, you're in the thick of things?
We're still displaced right now, but we're getting closer to going home. Mm-hmm. So it's lifting slightly, from my perspective.
Things have gotten better. We are seeing progress in our moving situation, and we are thankful for the people that are being around to help us with our planning and packing, and we're thankful for the community around us.
Mm-hmm. How are your kids doing? Dylan and Evan, 14 and 11 now, right?
Yes, they are excited. They have gotten an opportunity to go over to the new place and write their names on the beams, and they are drawing up their rooms, and they have hopes and plans.
How does it feel to watch them experience things that way, Kevin?
It's great seeing them experiencing that way. And as parents, we're just trying to make these things as pleasant for them as possible. So the whole house build progress is it can be pretty intense. We make it fun for them for picking out furniture and decorating their rooms how they want to see it. So we're making the journey exciting for them.
Mm-hmm. Now, Gloria, you've been on with us now. This is the fourth time. And we also have met Dylan, your older child. And one of the things that you shared with us that Dylan also spoke to was that, Kevin, you were home when that tornado first hit. You witnessed trees, snapping and falling, your roof flying off your home. How do you feel sitting here now, reflecting on that moment where you ran to your basement?
The moment was pretty intense. It was short, but really intense. So I was in the backyard for a lot of the storm, and I was trying to get back into the house, but I heard a loud crack, and then I ran back to my Jeep, and all of a sudden, the tree in the backyard fell where I was located. So I was in the vehicle being rocked around and seeing the roof fly off and trees fall down. So it was a pretty intense moment.
So you never made it to the basement, right?
No, I was stuck in my vehicle.
Oh. And you are, as I understand, you're people of faith, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what was happening during that time? And was faith something that you were leaning on?
I was leaning heavily on faith because, you always hear about the tornado warnings and you say, well, it's never going to come my way. I don't have to worry about that. But in that moment, when trees are falling around, bricks are falling, you are definitely praying for safe passage to this tornado. And we're thankful that we were were able to get through this without any major injuries on our part. Family is fine, and everything else is just, inconvenient.
When you came out of your truck, what were your first thoughts? What were the things that you saw around you?
My first thought was I was amazed at the devastation. I'd never witnessed a tornado close up before. When I drove around to the front of my house, because the back of my house was blocked by a truck, blocked by a tree, I saw a lot of wood on the street. I couldn't figure out where all this wood come from. And then it was our roof. Our roof was just sitting on the street in front of our house. So.
Gloria, the first time you joined our show, it was shortly after the tornado. You shared your thoughts on the city's response. And I'd like to listen back to a clip where I asked you about that. And up to that point, which was the noon hour on May 20th, you'd not seen anyone from the city in your neighborhood after the EF3 tornado ripped through it. And here's what you said.
It really breaks my heart, but it's kind of a reality check for me. I grew up in North City, and it's been an area that's been forgotten. It's been an area that has been, divested. And so I didn't expect a big response, to be quite honest, but it still is upsetting. It's still heartbreaking. I see the need. I see the people. Of course, we need, food and water and daily things. And so I think a lot of the organizations are providing that. But some of the long-term supports and, getting the trees down. Now, the streets were cleared pretty quickly. I will say that.
Okay.
But in terms of, there was a tree in front of one of the neighbors' houses that we had to go and cut so she could get out of her front door safely. So things like that, it's missing.
Yeah.
And we need a response. I saw a few crews. I saw Amarin out today, and so maybe it's on the way, but this is day 4, and so that immediate response was not there.
Gloria, have your thoughts changed at all about the city's response, be it about the assistance they were providing in the earlier post-tornado period or the rate at which they have been responding?
It's still very heartbreaking. I mean, and that's so sad. 4 days later until now, 300 and however many days later, the things that are getting done are being done by the residents themselves. And so if you had insurance and you're able to work through that process, then those are the folks that are rebuilding. And so our neighbors around the corner from us and things, we're seeing some work being done, but those are folks who have had access to aid from their insurance companies. Some people had a little bit of help from FEMA, but the funds that I heard were allocated from the city, still not yet. Not yet. And I've gone to community meetings, and I hate to say that I feel like there's so much confusion still, and the steps to really see progress, no.
Kevin, what about you? Is there something that Gloria has just said that brings up something in particular for you, or in what we heard her share almost a year ago?
Right. My wife, she's made really good points as far as the progress goes. You would think that there'd be some kind of direct or more direct line for receiving the help or even asking the questions. A lot of the delay is due to people just not knowing who to call or what the process is, or help filling out the paperwork, the request forms. There's just no direct or easy path for people to get questions answered and for assistance to be requested.
If you had to characterize the level of morale in your neighborhood, or maybe even in the greater North St. Louis area, how would you say your community is feeling at the present stage of tornado recovery? Kevin?
Initially, when the storm was pretty new and fresh to the area, we think morale was pretty low because all you saw was destruction and not a lot of physical assistance being offered. At this point, the people that are getting help, like that she said earlier, people that have the insurance and have the some FEMA assistance, but a lot of people have just left. They've just left their homes in the current conditions that they are, and with them being not insured or there's no path of repairs, it's just a visual reminder of the devastation that's gone through North City.
Yeah, and I look at it too from I think I talked about this before. Around the corner from us, there were 7 houses in a row that had residents on the 16th, and on the 17th they were empty. Only 2 out of those 7 houses are having repairs done. The other 5 landlords own those houses. I don't know if they had insurance or not, but if they did, they likely took the money and they walked away from those homes. I see a lot of discourse online, and when people say, because the Rams money keeps coming up, oh, what about the Rams funds? What about this? And there are so many people that are upset about the possibility of people receiving help. And I don't even understand that, though. But they're saying the people should have had insurance. Sometimes the folks that did have insurance, they're having a hard time working through the process. They're not getting all of the resources that they're supposed to receive. Some people had, paperwork tied up with family issues, things like that. So there's a lot to work through. And if you don't have that guided support to really work through that, then it's just not getting done. And it's going to take, it looks like, private funds and people doing the work themselves the way that it's being done now. That's the only way through.
So the Rams money, this is something that has been in a great deal of conversation. The city of St. Louis has gone back and forth on where money to rebuild in North St. Louis could and should come from. And with the Ram settlement money, we're looking at roughly $250 million. So the city of St. Louis aldermen, they're looking at how to approach this. There are many who believe that some portion of those settlement dollars should go to North St. Louis, but there are different opinions about how much. And some are looking to spend that on infrastructure, like our sewer systems. Others are looking toward boosting downtown. Where do each of you stand on that money? How do you believe that RAM settlement funds should be used, Kevin?
Well, right now they're having a conversation trying to decide how much to spend and where to spend it. Meanwhile, people are still displaced. People have nowhere to go and little options. So it seems like it'd be a better visual to make some decisions now than to wait for a final decision. You may not need to spend all of the money now, but just some kind of help now. It's been almost a year and we're still trying to figure out how to spend the first dollar. But in the meanwhile, the houses are not getting in any better condition. Weather's still a factor. Family lives are a factor. Children getting to and from school, from different school districts, that's a factor. So until you can make a decision or any kind of progress, things are just getting worse by themselves.
Mm-hmm. Gloria?
I'm really confused about it, honestly. I don't know. I think even with the first wave of funds that came through, I went to a community meeting and I posed the question straight up to the mayor. Where did the money, how was it spent? And I was told that, I think his name was Julian
Nix.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He said something like there was $70 million allocated towards nonprofits to help with the efforts, and then like $10 million allocated to help rebuild houses. And I thought that was so unbalanced, and I wondered, why. And he talked about there being immediate needs that people had and things like that. Well, even though if people are judging and saying, hey, you have to be responsible and you don't have insurance, so that's on you, kind of a thing, we know all of that in the back of our minds, but in our hearts, we know that people need help moving forward. the direct assistance in rebuilding homes is what we need. So there was already low housing stock in North City, and now homes have been hit by tornadoes. I don't know what nonprofit it is, but whoever it is, can we get these houses back online? That's what needs to happen, not just another, handout of cash to nonprofits or whomever that's filtering through some way and we don't know where it lands. We need to see community. We need to see houses come back online so people have somewhere to live. Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
And the Julian Nix that we were talking about is the Chief Recovery and Neighborhood Transformation Officer for the city of St. Louis. The times that you've been on, Gloria, we've talked with you roughly once a quarter, and we've discussed what is left to be understood or known about what insurance was going to help with, how long recovery and rebuilding might take. What are the questions that are left to be answered? Has anything come up, another surprise, something that you've had to manage with regard to rebuilding your home that is you have questions?
Do we have have we had any surprises with building? Our process it's been pretty straightforward. We've been able to surround ourselves by people that are in it to make sure that we get the job done. Now, initially, when we started the home build process, there was a crooked contractor that we were working with that kind of ran off with some of our money. But we learned from there to work with a dispersing company, and that company holds the funds. They are helping us sort through the contract and making sure that everything is done correctly. They have inspectors come out before we pass out any more money, things like that. They're getting lien waivers signed. So there's a lot to it that we've been blessed now to work with a team of people and getting it done right and fairly for us. So
when Gloria mentioned that crooked contractor, your eyes got big, Kevin.
Yes, it was one of those things that, whenever there's a storm, there are always going to be storm chasers coming through. So everyone's coming by. They're experts on roofing. They're experts on plumbing. They're experts in all these different venues. They come from out of town. They don't exist. And people lose money that way. So we did learn a lesson by with all these storm chasers coming through, but we did recover from that. So we have been thankful for the distributing companies to keep things more organized and help protect the funds and how things are spent.
Yeah, the guy asked, he asked for about $20,000 in upfront. He called it pre-construction cost. And so he was supposed to be working on certain things. He wound up getting only one thing done for us, and that was getting the survey of the land completed. But everything else that he had promised, we never saw. And he had the check, and he's gone.
That was Gloria and Kevin Nolan in conversation with St. Louis on the Air host Elaine Cha. They're reflecting on what they and their family have experienced in the year since the May 16th tornado. We need to take a quick break, but we'll be back with updates on the Nolans' home and neighborhood. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
Support comes from Gemma, architects, planners, and designers seeking to bring joy to their clients and communities. Details at gemastl.com.
Welcome back. I'm Kate Grumke. We now return to host Elaine Cha and her conversation with Gloria and Kevin Nolan. The Nolans have taken St. Louis on the Air along their recovery and rebuilding journey since the May 16th tornado. Here's Elaine.
Let's get that neighborhood update. How does it look now in the O'Fallon neighborhood that you live in? Are there still tarps? How many more homes now are starting to become whole? Kevin?
There has been some progress on some of the homes, but you still see plenty of roof damage. You still see bricks. You still see some landscaping still down. So for it being such a long time since the storm, you would like to think there'd be more progress or a more positive visual of the neighborhood, but you can still tell that a tornado has been through here.
How about renters in your neighborhood? Have any of those folks moved back in? Gloria, you were talking about that row of, was it 7 houses and only a couple of them now?
So those 7 houses are still empty, and 2 of them are getting work done now. Like they just started working on the roofs of those houses. But I think that those other 5 houses will just sit there,
Yeah.
you know? And that is the story, like block by block.
How about neighbors themselves? Do you have any sense of where folks who are either renters or homeowners, where they've gone?
I think most people, they dispersed to wherever they could find. I know our tenants went to North County, and that's where they are for now, and they plan to come back. But they had to move where there were available units. And so some families doubled up with one another, so sleeping on each other's couches and just kind of hanging out wherever they could. And so we don't, people are just scattered. And so that's what I was really talking about, was putting those houses back together so people can come home. That seems far in the distance. I did see some work being done, though, on Julia Davis Library today, and I was very excited about that because that was like a really a community hub. We would have a lot of meetings there, after school programming, just, story hour, all of those things at that library. And it was devastating to see it ripped up like that, and so they're putting it back together, so that's a plus.
Specific neighbors, for example, the neighbor who had the damaged truck, do you know what has happened with that neighbor?
The neighbor our roof fell on his truck. He moved.
Oh.
He moved, but we tried to help him.
Yeah.
We did.
And then the neighbor who needed a tree cut in order to get out of her home safely?
They're there.
Okay.
They're in their home, and I think that they may have sustained a little wind damage, but that was it. The tree just came down and it was blocking her in, but she's still in that house on the corner, yes.
For your family, I believe that things are starting to look up. And speaking of up, you just mentioned the roof. Gloria, the last time you were on with your daughter, Dylan, you said that you finally had a roof, and that was already 6 months ago. What is the status of your duplex now, Kevin?
The duplex is almost done and ready to be lived in again. We have inspections coming up to make sure that it's passed a residency inspection. And like Gloria said earlier, that the tenants are excited about coming back to live in the neighborhood. It's a really great neighborhood. Once again, Julia Davis is a good hub as far as the library goes. Fairground Park is right next to us. Really great park. Really a lot of options as far as entertainment goes. So we're excited about the progress that we're seeing.
How did it feel to see that happening? For there to be, you were driving by the house to kind of check on how things were going. Was there a certain point at which you felt like you could breathe a little bit easier?
I know for our home, the groundbreaking ceremony was really exciting. Once you start making phone calls to contractors, they start showing up with tools. That's really exciting. There's a lot involved in having a house built. So every little light switch, every knob, every paint color. So we have made it as fun as possible for the kids as far as them picking out new furniture, new bedroom sets. So trying to make this a pretty pleasant experience for them as far as what they have to see and deal with.
And that home that you broke ground on this is a completely new house, right, Gloria?
It is. It's exciting. I think it's caused quite a bit of buzz in the neighborhood. Like people are driving by to see, and people are watching out for us. It's been so sweet. We love it. We have like neighbors that are in the next block and they can see everything, and so we'll get text messages. They're working. They're doing stuff.
It's confirmation.
They're putting up walls.
It's not just pre-construction.
Right. They're there.
Right.
They're actually there. They're bringing stuff in. They're bringing in a lot of wood. And so people drive around making sure that everything is fine, and everything is, thank God, nothing has been touched. Mm-hmm. Everybody is excited to see this new home come to the neighborhood, and we're excited too. We're hoping to spark joy and spark encouragement for others to say, hey, this is our community, and it's worth being here. Mm-hmm. And we're invested, and you should too.
So what are you looking forward to most?
I want to celebrate with the neighbors, with the neighborhood. I am excited about it. And I keep talking about this giant party. And I said, there's going to be a taco truck, and there's going to be a band or a DJ. We want it to be a big thing, because when everything fell apart, everybody showed up. And we want to invite them back to say, look how far we've come. And we want to celebrate that with you. And we want to welcome you into our new space, and just enjoy some time. And because there's so much to be upset about and to be sad about. But I look forward to that celebration. Mm-hmm.
There were quite a lot of boots on the ground when the storm first hit, so people bring out their personal chainsaws, generators, water, food. So the neighborhood did show up, so we want to show our appreciation.
Neighborhood, school friends, mm-hmm. church friends, high school, like all of the people. And so I shouldn't have kept the list, but I kind of did a little bit, just kind of like so I can remember who to reach back and send invitations to come and party with us.
So you're staying in North St. Louis, for nearly a year. Gloria, you have been staunch in saying that you and your family were going to stay in North St. Louis. What does it mean to you to be doing this? What does it represent for St. Louis?
When I think about it, I think about restoration. That's what we really need. We need restoration in St. Louis, especially North City. Like I said, it's been that part of town where it's like, oh, don't put any money there. Team 4 plan and all kinds of things have, said this is not worth it. But we can put value on it, and we can restore it, and we can decide to do that and be serious about it and take steps towards making it happen. And so I jokingly said to Kevin today, I was looking at, there's a house across the street, and I said, we need to get that house. We need to, if somebody has to do it, it's going to come from the people that live there ultimately. Nobody's going to come and save us, unfortunately. And so we have to get that in our minds and then move forward.
That was Gloria and Kevin Nolan in conversation with St. Louis on the Air host Elaine Cha about the year their family has had since the May 16th tornado severely damaged their home. We need to take a quick break. Coming up, how residents of North St. Louis have decided to rebuild or leave their neighborhoods, with STLPR reporters Andrea Henderson and Hiba Ahmed. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. Welcome back. I'm Kate Grumke. Gloria and Kevin Nolan were among hundreds of people in St. Louis affected by last May's tornado. And before we continue, I want to invite you to share your story. On tomorrow's St. Louis on the Air, we're going to talk about the recovery journey and whether St. Louis is prepared for another disaster. We'll open our phone lines tomorrow, but you can send us an email with your thoughts in advance. Email talk@stlpr.org. That's talk@stlpr.org. You can also email us a voice memo. Here to talk about more of their coverage as part of our Torn series, we have STLPR reporters Hiba Ahmed and Andrea Henderson with me in studio. Hiba and Andrea, welcome back to the show.
Hello.
Hey.
So we just heard that update from the Nolans, who are working to rebuild and stay in their neighborhood. Andrea, how does that story compare to the residents that you've been speaking with lately?
Yeah, so many of the residents that I spoke to, they actually want to stay in their homes in North St. Louis, but just different circumstances, like maybe their home has to be demolished, or they can't find anything else in the area, or they're staying in the area, staying in their homes, but it's just so much repair that needs to be done that sometimes they're just kind of like, well, I might need to leave for a second and then potentially come back. So there is some kind of overlap there where they are wanting to stay there, but they have to move, whether they're moving out to South St. Louis or they're living with family and friends in North County or other parts of the county. But there are some similarities there.
And there was one person you highlighted in your story yesterday, Miss Dupree. Can you tell us a little bit about her situation?
Yeah, so yesterday I spoke, or the story that came out yesterday was Miss Jackie Dupree. She is a lady that's been living in the Penrose neighborhood for decades now. She moved in 1965 when she was 3 years old. And she's seen the neighborhood through many of the changes. However, what was so special about her block is many of the families that live there, they have been living there for years as well. And their families, they moved in families next door to them or down the street from them just so that they can kind of keep that generation going to having homes and being able to stay in North St. Louis. But Miss Dupree, she basically is living in her home, even though she does not have many windows to look out of. They're still boarded up. She is living in portions of the home because there are some portions of her home that is just unlivable right now. But she's hoping that the city will just hurry up and just figure out what they're planning on doing for not only her community, her street, but for the rest of the folks who are just in limbo.
And Hiba, we heard Gloria Nolan say the things that are getting done are being done by the residents themselves. You've been spending a lot of time with a group that's also been really proactive about getting their own work done in the last year. So can you tell us about that group you've been highlighting?
Yeah, so it's a group of volunteers over on Enright Avenue, 5228 Enright Ave. And they've been, and that's tucked away in the Academy neighborhood, just north of Delmar. So basically the quick story there is that there are two residents who live south of Delmar in the Central West End, Bolivar area, whose homes were also struck by the tornado. They started to kind of help around in their communities, got a call that actually there are a bunch of homes that are really badly damaged just north of Delmar on Enright. So they wandered over there and saw homes just in just shambles, right? Bricks everywhere, roofs torn off, just really severe damage, and residents really not knowing what are the next steps, right? And just to characterize Academy a little bit, this is a middle class, predominantly middle class area. Many people own their homes, own multiple properties on the block. Met one man, Larry Powell, who owned his home, bought another house for his grandbabies, and then also just recently bought another plot of land. And so these are people who are invested in this neighborhood, really believe in it. And so they have basically come together for the last year every single weekend. Like, that is the craziest thing, like very consistently over the last year to rebuild and to get people back into their homes. And it's really interesting because I think they have organized these volunteers, raised over $1 million, and have committed to trying to help up to 35 to 40 families to get back into their homes in the Academy area. But so far, they have gotten one family back in. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's just, this group of people who's shown up so consistently, yet the process has been really slow because the recovery is just so extensive.
Yeah, tell me more about that. They do seem like they are doing everything right. And like you said, they raised more than $1 million.
Yeah.
So why have they still had such a struggle to recover?
Because the expenses are really high, the damage is really extensive, right? I think what was interesting visiting these homes over and over again, this group of volunteers over and over again, is that, they would clear the debris and, maybe even do some a demo inside of the homes, like take down drywall and stuff, and then another rain would come in. Right? Because the holes in the roof are still there, or the tarps have worn out. So now they have to clear the floorboards this time around. Okay, now they've done that. Another rain comes in, or the snow happened over the winter, and more damage. So like that has been the story over this year for not just these homes on Enright and Kensington in the Academy neighborhood. I think this is for many of the storm damaged homes, is that it wasn't just the initial impact of the tornado. It was all of the subsequent storms that have come afterwards. And because the city, a lot of these families have not been able to get all the funds reimbursed from their insurance agencies. So they've waited on city programs, but we really haven't seen that ramp up until now. They've waited on state and federal services or dollars, but that's also been a drag. So it's just folks kind of stuck in this like limbo period of like, okay, these costs are really big. There's a shortage of contractors or experienced laborers to deal with the brick and the roofs and all of that. And then also just the extent of the damage that's just gotten worse.
And you mentioned insurance. Sometimes I read comments on tornado coverage. Probably shouldn't read the comments as much as I do, but I see a lot of people criticizing the survivors for not having insurance or questioning where's the insurance. And Andrea, your story yesterday really dove into the history of that. Could you tell us more about where is the insurance and what do you make of that narrative?
Yeah, it is funny when I look at some of those comments too. Kate, you're not the only one. But some of the folks that I spoke to, they had insurance. Some of them did not have insurance, or they recently let it lapse because it was just too expensive. Like Miss Jackie Dupree, she recently had insurance up until, I believe, March of 2025. She let it lapse because it was just too expensive for her to take on. And, it really dove into that local disinvestment that really is there, and that long history of it, where it's redlining. There is that history of housing discrimination there. There's a history of, white flight, depopulation. And then all of those things combined really show that, the reason why some folks were either underinsured or did not have any insurance is because of that disinvestment, because of that discrimination. And now we have these undervalued homes. You have these homes that need extensive work prior to the storm. Some people, they talked about how they couldn't get insurance because they needed more tuck pointing, or they needed some of their shingles repaired. It was just so many different layers on why these families did not have insurance. But some of them that I spoke to, they did have insurance and they were making those payments, but they got dropped, or they couldn't afford it anymore. So it's just a combination of so many different things on why we are seeing insurance either not paying out or just not as helpful when getting these homes repaired.
Yeah, and that devaluing is so difficult too, because these are brick palaces often. These are such beautiful homes. So like to rebuild them would be really expensive. But years and years of redlining has meant that the paper value of them is lower than what insurance would need to pay out, right? And Hiba, what's your response to that focus on insurance? What have you heard from the people you've been speaking with?
Yeah, so many of the residents I spoke to all have insurance, and they still said it was a complete nightmare. It still is a nightmare. I mean, think about it. Any of us who've had to kind of battle with our insurance companies, whether it be car or property or even health insurance, there are challenges that come with that. For example, documentation, right? If people have these generational homes that have been passed down to them for, one parent, one grandparent after another, the documentation may not have been passed along as well, right? Things get lost all the time. So there's that piece of it. There's also I think I had one resident tell me that, her home had been really badly damaged. And she was told, well, you should have called your insurance company that day. And it's like, well, when my back wall is missing and my roof is missing, like that's maybe not my priority. My priority is making sure like my family is safe and like, do we have a place to go right now? Well, because we can't stay here. So I think it's that kind of misconception that like insurance is this kind of panacea for these emergency situations where, you know, we reported really early on after the storm that like, yeah, North City, many residents, it is largely uninsured. And we're hearing from residents now too that, you know, their policies are getting canceled or they're not able to renew because of this storm as well. Yeah. So, which is a pattern we've seen across the nation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also heard Gloria Nolan say earlier in the show that she's thinking about restoration for North City. I thought that was interesting because when you think about rebuilding, like, do we really want to rebuild to just what it was like before the storm? I feel like by saying restoration, she's thinking further back into the history. So, Andrea, you took a really deep dive into that history of some of these neighborhoods in your piece yesterday. So what do you think restoration would mean in this case?
I have my thoughts, but I think when it comes to restoration for many of these communities, I think they would like to start with what they have now, what they're seeing. A lot of them complained about, I just don't want to see crumbling homes anymore. I know we spoke to someone who stated, my children can't even go outside or my grandchildren can't even go outside and play anymore because all they see are these homes that need to be demolished. Whether or not they were vacant before, they did take a hit from the storm. So therefore, they really need to come down now. So I think really just seeing first, take care of these homes, get these crumbling homes, these homes with roofs basically caved in. Some of them are on the ground. Roofs are still on the ground. You know, get those homes taken care of. And then potentially, you know, what comes after, you know, maybe some vacant land or maybe some new investors or residents are telling me too that, you know, I wish that this home come down because I want to buy this piece of property that's right next to me. It's been vacant for a while. I could build something else on this land, or I can turn it into a garden to make the community beautiful. So many people just continue to say, give us the opportunity. One, tear the homes down. Two, if this land is available, let me purchase it, sell it to the residents because we can do something with it if you're not going to do something with it, speaking to the city. But yeah, I think it's just really focusing on getting those eyesores. That's what a lot of them call it. It's an eyesore. Get that eyesore out of here. Let us try to rebuild, get some programming in place for us to be able to rebuild, and then we can take it from here because North St. Louis did that prior. In the years prior, they took what they had and turned it into something beautiful. And we've seen it. We've heard about these stories over the years about the Ville being a booming community, Northside being a booming community. It may not come back to the booming community, but it can be something great for the community that is there right now.
And Hiba, with your story focused on this group of neighbors in the west part of the city, you've been checking in with them for almost a year now, and I wanted to hear from you how your mentality has shifted in the last year. So what did you think that this 1 year mark story would look like when you first started, and where did that end up?
So when we got this email from this resident who was like, we're doing this work and we want to talk about it. And I thought I was just visiting with a group that was going to do some volunteer work through the summer and then go home. And no, they showed up every single weekend. So it was an interesting case study to follow just one group to be able to understand, like, okay, how did these folks manage this over a year when the problem is so big? I thought by the end of this reporting, there would be more families back in their homes. I thought the block would look a lot different. Maybe some homes torn down that were really badly damaged, but at least roofs put back up, bricks put back into place. And I should say, like, it does look a lot better, right? There's a house on the corner of that block. It's white and it's been literally blown to bits. You can still see the staircase and the lamp And that's been kind of like my point of reference along with this group over the last year. And today I was just there this morning just to kind of like remind myself of like this year of reporting. And there was finally a city demolition truck outside of it. And I think it's going to come down later today or sometime this week. So there is progress, but it's slow. And talking to the group of volunteers, they very much said, this is way much bigger, way too big for us to handle. Like this, we need intervention from city or federal officials because this is too much to put on to the people who are already so impacted by this storm.
And we've been thinking about that group as kind of the rebuilders. They're working to rebuild. And Andrea, you've also been following the people who are not able to rebuild, who have left the city. Can you tell us about what you've heard from those folks who are completely displaced?
Yeah, I remember when I first thought about, doing this story, that's what came to mind because of all of the previous reporting that we've had on Black families leaving the city. And this was before a tornado even happened. So with a tornado here, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, it's just going to exacerbate this population. These folks are just going to move and we're no longer going to see them. I heard anecdotally, while looking for families who were planning on moving, that, oh, yeah, it's some families who moved to out of state or they moved to North County. I specifically could not actually talk with some that were moving out of state or moving to North County for the long term. But I did speak to some folks who either moved to another part of North St. Louis that was not hit during the storm, or I spoke to people who moved to other parts of the city, so South St. Louis. And all of them want to stay in North St. Louis. They either want to stay in their home or come back to the area because their entire lives are there. Their family is there. Their friends are there. Businesses are there, So everything is there. But what they're saying is it's hard for them to find a spot now to move back into, whether it is to rent or if it's to purchase. And I think now what I found is that a lot of families who left, they're kind of grappling with the fact that they may no longer be a homeowner anymore, especially if they're older, because many of these older ones, they owned their homes prior. And so they're thinking, why do I want to go get another 30, 40-year loan again? And who knows if I have 30 or 40 more years left on this earth. So, now they're just thinking, well, I'm just going to continue to rent. And guess what that does now? It just continues to drive the Black homeownership rate down.
And in the last couple minutes here, I just wanted to hear from you both what your biggest unanswered questions are. So, Hiba, we'll start with you. What do you think you need to find an answer to in the next years, months?
I'm very curious to see how the city chooses to keep its residents here, and whether that's through city programs, whether that's, really helping folks repair and rebuild their homes, or maybe starting up, a grant program to help boost the home ownership rate again. I'm very interested to see how the city continues to respond to really keeping this community here and it not turning into a long-term, slow migration out of this region that we've just seen historically.
Yeah. And what about you, Andrea?
I think that's similar to what I would say is, I just want to see what more they're going to do or how much faster they will work or quicker they will try to get these healthy home repair programs out. Because I think a lot of the families that I spoke to, they were just like, if you give us the money, we'll get it done. But we just need the assistance. So I would like to see that. And then also potentially maybe seeing, more help on the contracting side of things. Where would that be?
Hiba Ahmed and Andrea Henderson are my colleagues here at St. Louis Public Radio. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
To read all of our coverage as we approach 1 year since last May's tornado, visit stlpr.org/tornado.
Today's episode was produced by Maya Norfleet and Kate Grumke,
with audio engineering by Emily Woodbury.
And I, Danny Wissentowski. Audio editing by Maya Norfleet. production assistance from our audio engineer, Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Hi, I'm Laura Hamden, and my colleague Jessica Rogan and I are your daily hosts of the Gateway newsletter. We meet with the editors in the STLPR newsroom every weekday to bring you the top local stories of the day in a quick and easy 6-minute read by 6 a.m. In an age of overwhelm, it's a refreshing, thoughtful take on the news day, if we do say so ourselves. Fine-tune your daily news habit with the Gateway newsletter. Subscribe at stlpr.org/gateway.